In this video, I'm going to quickly walk through using System Center 2012 to deploy a virtual machine. And this can be done with VM Virtual Machine Manager, this can be done with App Controller, but I'm going to do it using an orchestrator runbook called from Service Manager, which then hooks into Virtual Machine Manager to actually do the deployment. So I've already created the runbook. You can see here I've got initialized data and I'm passing it 4 variables: the template name, the cloud to deploy to, the owner, and the VM template. This is then using the scVMM activity to go and create that VM using the parameters provided. Then I'm actually using a PowerShell script to go and set the owner. Now there is an optional parameter in the create VM from template activity that sets an owner, but I just wanted to show a combination here. So I'm going to rename this step just so it actually is clearer what it's actually doing. So altogether this will create a VM, set the owner to what you configure, so basically it's what's been passed to the runbook. So what I'm going to do is in Service Manager, I'm going to refresh my orchestrator connector. So this will bring over that runbook and make it available for me to actually use. So that's completed. So now in the library, I'll see my new runbook. And that orchestrator runbook I'm using, you can actually download yourself. I've exported it in the comments for this video. So there's the links you can directly download and look at the code yourself. So there's those orchestrator runbooks that I created under my cloud books. And there's my deploy template. So the next thing I need to do now is to actually create a runbook activity from that runbook. So we click the create runbook activity template, give it a name. So I always call it the same as the runbook name. If you wanted to give a description, you can. You can select where you want to save this. You can create your own custom management pack or use the default option it's giving you. Then there's just a few bits of information you type in. Really as little or as much as you want. This is just describing that activity as you're going to use it in another template in a minute. So I added my own area of virtualization to the list. Make sure you set, this is very important, you must set is ready for automation. And here what we can see, it's gone and looked at that initialized data and it's found those 4 fields. And you'll notice it's mapping it to text 1, then text 2, text 3, and text 4. So these are just custom values that it's storing the data I'm going to enter into that would then be passed to that runbook via that initialized string. So I've now created that activity. So the next thing is actually going to be to use it. So now I'm actually going to go and create a template. Now I could have right clicked on that runbook automation template and created it from there, but I'm just going to manually go through the steps. So this is actually going to be the template that's going to use that runbook. And also I actually want to integrate and have an authorization as part of this. So I'm going to go ahead and create a name for this template. Description. My class is going to be of service request. Again, I could select different manage pack to store it in. Give it some details. And this is where we get to the good bit. So activities. So the first thing I want is an approval. So I'm going to go and add the review activity. And here you can configure how you want it reviewed. So obviously give it title description again. The stage is approve. Now you can hear line manager should review. Means it's going to check Active Directory. Whoever's submitting this, their manager in AD will have to approve it. Or it's actually based on their configuration item in Service Manager, which is fed from AD. Or you can put in a manual list. You can put in 5 people. I need 50% of the votes. Really whatever combination you want. But I'm just making me the reviewer. Now I'm going to add in that runbook activity. So it has to be approved. And then it's going to go and deploy the template. So now I have a template that has an approval activity and it has actually using the runbook. Now I need to make this available. So first thing I do is create a request offering. So I'm going to create a new request offering. So this will be available in the list view of the Service Manager web portal. If I only have a request offering, it'll be available in the list. I can select an icon. I've got a bunch of icons I have. That's my SEVMM icon. Give it a description that the users will see. So again, this is going into our service catalog. This is going to be available in the standard Service Manager portal. I'm going to select that template, which is the one we created. Deploy VM. This is then telling the user what to do. So I was saying, please fill in all the fields. Then I'm going to add all 4 of the fields, the information I need. For example, I need the name of what is that new virtual machine that they're going to create. And that's just of type text. I want to know, for example, in my case, well, who is the owner? Now, you could have this to actually basically subscribe from who is currently the user logged on at the portal. But this is me just manually. Maybe I'm an administrator and I want to apply it to someone else as the user. Now I want them to be able to select the cloud. So rather than them have to type in the cloud name, what I can do is instead of prompt type being text, I'm going to create a simple list. Which is going to let me just create a set of customizable items in there. Now there are other things I could do. I can make it query other information I have in Service Manager to actually dynamically fill that in. But for now, for this simple example, I'm just going to manually populate it. Then I want which template. And again, I'm going to have to manually populate all of the templates. And once again, I could pull this in automatically. Microsoft has the Cloud Services Process Pack, which does a lot of this. This is really for educational purposes. So now I'm going to go and configure, and I type in the names of my clouds. So these are going to be what the users are going to see as options. So I can set which one is the default. My test cloud is my default. And I'll add another one. So I can have a production cloud, for example. And now all of my templates. So I really have 7 templates I want to offer in here. And these, you need to make sure you get the names right, because in my basic runbook right now, I don't do any checking. So I have one called blank VM. And then I have 3 types of Windows 2012. Small, medium, large. And I have 3 types of Linux. Small, medium, large. So I'm just going to fill those in. So for the magic of editing, I'm now finished. So you can see all of those values are now populated. Now I have to actually go ahead and map those through in that runbook automation activity, because that's where I actually need to use them. So this is basically saying, notice it's showing me text 1, and it does show you if you hover over it, that's the string owner name. Okay, so the string owner name is which prompt output. So that's the second one. New VM owner name. Then the next one is, what is the VM name? So that was the first one. So basically just mapping through the parameters that are expected by the runbook to the request I made inside the Service Manager request offering, so I can populate it correctly. And it's showing me they're ticked off, showing me I've already used it. And again, you would notice I can select other pieces of data to pass through if I wanted to. So it's like, this is where I could have said, hey, take the portal username for the owner, if I didn't want to manually type that in. But for now, I'm thinking I'm an administrator maybe, and I'm just creating it for someone else, so I want to be able to set that. Make sure it's published. I'm making the administrator the offering owner, and you're done. So that will now show up in the Service Manager web portal under the list view. But I actually want to make it a service offering, so it shows in the service catalog. Now, I have already created a service offering category in terms of virtualization. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this offering to it. So if I go to my service offerings, you'll actually notice, now you would have just done create, but I have a manage VM resources. So I did a create service offering already, and I typed in manage VM resources, so I can have multiple request offerings in a service offering. So notice I gave it a name, I gave it an icon, I gave it a category. Then under request offerings, I added in some of the ones I already had. Now I'm going to add in this new one. Again, make sure they have to be status published, so deploy VM. So that's going to be added. That's all you had to do. You would have made sure you set the offering status to published, add in the request offerings. So now I'm ready. These will now populate in our web portal. So I'm actually going to jump over to the web portal itself so you can see these in action. So I'm logging into the web portal. So notice in the list view, I would have seen it. This is where I would have seen deploy VM if I hadn't have created the service offering. So that's just the request offerings. That's everything you see here under publish request offerings. But I want it to show in that category view. So that's where I require the service offering. So the two service offerings I had, and then it's going to show me the 3 request offerings I have in there. So I'm going to say deploy VM. It will give me any description and the data that I entered. So again, I need the VM name, I need the owner. We're still on a Halo theme in the John Savill demo world. I select the cloud, and then I select the template I want to deploy. I click next and submit. Now what this is now going to do is it's now going to go through the process in Service Manager, and it's going to require approval first. Now what I've configured in my environment is an email notification. So notice it's now got that service request, and it's actually going to go through. The first thing is it's going to wait for approval. So it's not even running yet. So it's not picked up to start requesting approval, but soon that will change to an in progress, and that's going to kick off that approval. Now what I created, I've actually created a workflow for my activities for the review activity. And I've basically created it to say, hey, in the event there's an update, run this workflow. So I'll edit that to show you what I did. This is how I get those notifications via email. And all I check is, so I created a name, request review workflow, and you need a criteria. So mine says, when the activity status does not equal in progress, and it changes to equals in progress, then perform this action. And my action is notify the reviewer of that activity via an email template. The email template is notify review, which I've already created. And it's just HTML. And again, in the notes of this video, you'll see the HTML file. You could modify, obviously, for your environment, change the links. And I have a separate video which actually walks through connecting Service Manager 2010 to Exchange, and the process has not changed. So I walked through all of this in that separate video. So I suggest you go and look at that if you're really interested in the email notification side. So if I go and look again at the open one, it should now actually have gone into requesting review status, which would have triggered that activity. So now it's playing. So now what I should see is, as the reviewer, I should get an email pop up. And it's not instant. It may take a minute, 2 minutes. Oh, good timing. So there we go. Now what I could do now is I could just click approve, which is another thing I set up in the separate Service Manager Exchange video. So we'll just send an email with the word approved and the ID of this review activity. Or I can just click, it will take me to the approvals website. Under my activities, I can select it and say approve. I can give it a comment. And done. So now what will happen is it's gone through that approval. And again, this will take a little time, but it will go through that process. And the next thing it will actually do is now go through requesting the runbook. So that's ticked. So now it's going to go and call the runbook. So if I jump over to my orchestrator server, if we're lucky, if I actually go back over, oh, there we go. So we see it started. So that's now being called from Service Manager. So it's got the initializer. Now it's calling the create VM from template. And then it would go and do the set VM owner. So remember, this first, the second activity is actually creating it using the Virtual Machine Manager integration pack. And then my last step is setting the owner, just to show you integrate with PowerShell. I do via a .NET script, basically PowerShell. So you can see that's finished. Success. So now what I should end up with is a VM created, and the owner should be Cortana. And that completes this demonstration. I appreciate your time.